Hey guys, this is the Average Waterfowlers podcast. Glad you could find it. This is our first podcast that we've ever done, so please bear with us. It's going to be a little slow at points, but we're working through it and we will improve. This first episode is definitely geared towards the new hunter, the guy that maybe put in a few hunts last season with some friends, wants to get more into it this season. We're here to help you guys out through this, so we're going to dive into a few topics at kind of a high tree level view, and then next week and the subsequent weeks we will be following up with more in-depth podcasts on each topic, the ones that we cover in this episode, and obviously we're going to go into a lot more in the future. So sit back, enjoy. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let us know what you think. Please leave some comments. Thanks so much. My name's Josh Kaywood, and I'm here with my brother Caleb Kaywood, longtime hunting partner. We've been chasing ducks for about the past 12 years, and really we want to just put this out for you guys so that you could learn from our mistakes. And sorry, this is our first podcast, and Caleb is clearly feeling awkward. So we want to just put out some information for you guys, help get you out into the field. Hopefully introduce duck hunting to you. We want to make sure that other people love the sport as much as we do, and we found it to be a huge beneficial thing for us in our lives. We're not the best duck hunters in the world, but we've come a long way. We've learned a lot of things. So, Caleb, why don't you kind of introduce yourself, and we can just talk about how we got into duck hunting and our kind of evolution through that and where it's taken us.
All right, so as you guys know already, I'm Caleb Kaywood. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, along with Josh, and we did not grow up in a hunting family. Didn't know a lot of people that were big hunters. We kind of grew up in a suburban area. Nonetheless, we grew up outdoors, and I grew up loving the outdoors: backpack, kayaking, camping, canoeing, and fishing. So I guess my first interaction hunting was in high school. I went to high school in Chattanooga with a lot of guys from across the South who were big hunters. And I think somewhere along my sophomore year in high school, we got a shotgun for Christmas. Went on a first duck hunt, probably junior year of high school, and didn't really pick up hunting right then. I picked up deer hunting a little bit in high school, but we just weren't in a location for good duck hunting. So I didn't pick up duck hunting until college, when I went to college in Memphis. From college, I went to the Army. I was stationed in Fort Campbell, basically hunted the same area: the Mississippi Flyway, Mississippi, West Tennessee, Arkansas, and West Kentucky as well. I learned a bunch of different styles of hunting, from public land, using a boat on the Mississippi River, to walking into potholes, finding unfrozen areas when everything else was frozen up. So, and then I've also hunted over private land, and now I'm currently in Louisiana, in New Orleans. So I've got a lot of marsh to work with. I've got a lot of public land, and I'm currently learning how to adapt and hunt in those types of environments.
Cool.
So
Yeah, so let's take it back. This ought to be interesting because we haven't talked about it in a long time, but kind of take it back to the beginning days. I mean, I remember I ended up in college in Mississippi at Ole Miss, and I got introduced to duck hunting through my roommate who grew up in Illinois. And so he took me up to Illinois, and I had never really been hunting, and we hunted right in Alton, Illinois, opening day of duck season. It was just like the craziest thing I'd ever seen. We're, public land. Everybody was at the gate. The game warden kind of like said, okay, go get it. And it was a sprint to the holes. So we got out there, and I just got hooked. And when I got back from that trip, I guess were you already in school or were you still at I think you were still in
Uh,
Chattanooga, weren't you? Cuz that was my sophomore year. So,
yeah, so I would have been a senior in high school. So actually I remember this. Yeah, so you called me one day and you were like, "Hey, I got back from a duck hunt in Illinois. It was awesome." And and from there you basically started hunting in Mississippi, and it wasn't until another season rolled by until I was in Memphis.
you were in Memphis and then you were able to come down and we were just we you and I were basically just finding public land. We didn't know anything. I mean, we didn't have anybody to teach us. The internet, I mean, I don't even know if YouTube really exists. I guess YouTube existed back then, but no one was putting out video content on how to do any of this. I mean, basically, we were fresh. We had no idea. And so we were just running around finding like little public spots with water. And we were like, oh, there might be ducks here. We didn't even know that we were in a pretty good part of the country to duck hunt. We just knew that we wanted to get out there and get after it. Um,
Yeah, I think that first season we really had no idea what we were doing. Um, I know I know that I think after your hunt in Illinois and after my hunt in South Carolina, my first hunt, I asked for some decoys, and
yeah.
we had
I
I think
got you
I,
those decoys for Christmas one year, not even
yeah
knowing what they. I had never been duck hunting. I was still in high school, or maybe right before I went duck hunting the first time. But they're those trashy redhead decoys.
redhead decoys. I think it was 12, 12 Drake mallards, or maybe or maybe 8 drakes and
Four hens.
four hens. But I I mean, we still have those decoys, so like they're durable,
They're
but
durable, yeah.
they just don't look great, you know.
No, that's
Um,
so funny, man. But
yeah,
we got out there. I mean, I'm trying to think. I remember there was that. We basically had that one pothole um, that we would always get lost walking into in the morning and end up on one side or the other side of the pothole. We hunted by the same tree every time, regardless of the wind. And
no. Hold on. So no, he. So when he says we get lost, so Josh finds this pothole, and I'm a freshman in college, or maybe a sophomore. I think it's a freshman. Josh finds this pothole, and I guess you had taken your buddy that took you to Illinois out there.
hmm
I forget his name.
Robert.
Robert. Yeah. So you guys had been out there and like maybe killed one or two ducks, and then, anyways, you were like, "Hey, come down. I got this pothole. It's off of this highway. Just meet me." So we go out there, and first off, we drive to the wrong pull off.
Yeah.
So it's a 2 lane highway, and you're like, "Oh, let's go. It's this pull off. It's this pull off." So we unload everything, and you're like, "It's off to the left of this dirt road." Like after you pull off, so we pulled off, went on the dirt road, drove down the dirt road, get everything out of the car. And we're like, "We're going left," which I believe was east. And after wandering around in the woods for like 30 minutes, you're like, "Oh man, I think we're too far, or we didn't go far enough down the main highway." And so we had to drive back, go off on the other side,
Yeah.
or pull off like sooner or later, further down the road, whatever it was. And then we found it eventually. We were a
Yeah.
little late getting out there, but I think we may have killed like 4 gadwalls that day.
Yeah, we did. It was like awesome. It was like the best hunt of the season.
Yeah, it
It-
was maybe the only hunt we killed something.
yeah, because I remember I think we killed something the first day, and then we came back during like Christmas break or Thanksgiving and dropped the hammer and had like the best day we ever had out there.
Yeah, I think it was Christmas.
Yeah. So yeah, our beginnings were humble. for sure. And it continued like that. I mean, throughout college, and I was in college a little bit longer than I probably should have been. And so I was, college for me was like 7 years. But so those seasons right around then, I mean, that's all we did. We just walked around, found water, and we got to learn a little bit more about it and started, reading Ducks Unlimited articles, figuring out that the Mississippi Flyway, kind of getting towards the Delta was a better idea. Um, so geographically, we were able to kind of hone in on some things. But I mean, that's what we did, right? Like we had shitty gear. We didn't know how to blow duck calls. We didn't really understand wind. We didn't really understand how to set decoys.
We didn't understand the migration patterns.
We didn't understand any of it.
Flyways, any of it.
Yeah. And but we just ran around and kind of figured it out. We just walked into places. We put a lot of miles in through some swampy crap, just walking through mud, sweating through our clothes, getting to the hole, freezing, sinking our waders, being 2 miles from the truck, and then, not kill anything, walk 2 miles back or whatever it was. I mean, we put a lot of miles in walking out. We used to hunt this lake. People from Mississippi or probably even Memphis will be familiar with this, called Sardis, and they would like drop the lake level, so you just have to walk through like mud flats forever to get to a hole. And we'd be real pumped if we killed a merganser right at first light that was dumb enough to fly into our decoys.
Yeah.
So, kind of thinking about that perspective, and maybe guys are watching this or finding this podcast, and they're in that same boat. They're young guys. Maybe they've hunted before. They hunted, with their friends, or their friends' dads got some blind. They drew some blind, or they got a lease, and they went out and they laid the hammer on, mallards and gadwalls and killed a whole shit ton of birds. And now they're excited and they're fired up to go do it again. But they realize, oh crap, they don't know where to start. Where are the places that we should, start pointing people to help them get out there and learn how to do this themselves, and maybe hopefully kind of get them going a little bit faster than it took us, because it took us a solid 6 or 7 years before we really knew what we were doing.
So the first place I would point anybody is one, figure out, obviously, if you live in Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, up the Mississippi River, things are going to be easier for you. Especially if you're near public land, and especially if you're near water projects like TVA and the Army Corps of Engineer lakes, where those lakes are public land. They drop the water level. There's holes out there. So, however, if you live in a place like Texas, things are going to be more difficult, and you don't have a lot of public land to work with. So you're going to have to start looking for either public land near you, or private land where you can call people, or you're going to have to get a lease. But for right now, I think it's probably best to stay with the public land, because I imagine that most people that are getting into this are going to have some sort of public land with water around them.
Yeah, for sure. Even in Atlanta, when I ended up living in Atlanta, there was a lake out there that I could still go and hunt when I couldn't drive back to Mississippi. There's no ducks in Georgia. I mean, there's no migration flying through Georgia, but I was still able to get out there, kill wood ducks and a couple local mallards and stuff. So, all right. So right now it's July, and this guy's thinking about, okay, I want to get out there. I want to go duck hunting for the first time. How does he find his public land? Does he get on, does he get on a certain website? Does he just get on, Google Earth and start looking around? Where where are we going? I've got some ideas of how I started figuring that out.
Yeah, so I think, obviously you're going to look in the hunting regulations and figure out what public lands are available to you. And then you're going to figure out what type of animal you can hunt on that public land. And in some places, you're going to have, hey, this is a deer and squirrel and rabbit place. And then in other places, there might be a picture of a waterfowl, and just go ahead and write those names down.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I would do is I would follow those out onto Google Maps and type them in and figure out where they are.
Cool.
Figure out which ones are closest to you. And from Google Maps, you should be able to, usually the state will provide you with some sort of map. They're not always good, but it'll have like an outline of like a box or maybe a screwed up looking box, a rectangle, whatever, around the public land that you can hunt. And so when you look at it on Google Maps, you can figure out, what the water situation is. And kind of figure out what your access is too.
Right.
And then a couple things to look for in the hunting regulations are access, because that's going to dictate whether or not you're going to have to walk, whether or not you can drive a four-wheeler. Mm-hmm. And just like we didn't have a four-wheeler, and I've never taken a four-wheeler on public property, so you don't need one.
Yeah.
But the other restrictions that you're going to need to look for is, I know in the South, especially in Louisiana, some places in Mississippi, you're going to have, also if you're near a military installation as well, you're going to have certain restrictions on that piece of property. And for instance, I know I guess it's a WMA near New Orleans, Pearl River WMA, has a restriction on a certain area because the U.S. Navy fighter pilots go and drop ordnance out there. So obviously, and I'm sure there's a fence around it out on the ground. I haven't actually been out there. There might not be, in which case you just need to know where you are on the map, because
that would suck.
Yeah, and so that's where I'd start. I'd start with the regulations, take a trip to Google Maps, and then obviously from there you're going to start looking.
Yeah. So I mean, I would personally probably drive out there, take a look at it, maybe take some binoculars with me, try to understand. Okay, there's cover over there, or maybe you'll notice some birds on the water somewhere. Maybe that's a good place to start thinking about setting your decoys up over there. Just get familiar with it in the daylight before your first hunt. That's always a sketchy thing, walking out there at 5 o'clock in the morning when it's still dark, maybe even earlier, and not knowing where the hell you are.
Yeah, I think that, and I think the other thing I would recommend is maybe not in the summer months, but as you start getting into July, closer to fall. Once you start getting out of the summer and closer to fall, closer to the beginning of the day, once some leaves get off the trees, once the water levels are starting to go back down from rain, snow, wherever your water sources are, then you go out there and you scout.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think generally speaking, your best scouting is going to be two weeks before the season and 2 weeks after the season. I've always heard that.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to pull this from somebody else, but the guy on Duck Commander always says that. And in my experience, that's generally right.
Yeah.
Because if I go 3 or 4 weeks after the season back to our place in Mississippi, I mean, I might not see a duck.
Right.
If I go a month prior, I know I'm not seeing a duck.
Right.
They're just not there. And I might maybe see some geese.
Right.
Some early geese, but they're just not there. So, that's the other stuff you got to worry about for scouting, is whether the birds are there and whether or not your water level is going to look. Because I know if you went out to Sardis right now,
mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an actual lake.
Right.
And so you're not really looking at a lake bottom. You're looking at an actual lake that in the fall will become a lake bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can go out and scout.
Right. No, you're dead on. And I mean, it's definitely too early to go out there and start scouting. Now, I mean, in North Dakota right now, it's probably not too early to start ghost scouting. But then again, those guys, I mean, the birds are everywhere. There's not too much scouting needed. And we've hunted North Dakota, and I mean, listen, we're definitely more familiar with the southeast, definitely the Mississippi Flyway. Specifically, the majority of our hunting is in Mississippi itself. But I mean, we've hunted all over the place at this point. We haven't done any coastal hunting. That's something I'd like to do one day. But so we're not experts on that by any means. But um, the first thing they would do is kind of get an idea of where they can hunt in the regs. Go to your state's DNR website. It's all on the internet now. It's all on the internet. You can find everything on the internet for your state. And then just Google Earth. The next thing, I mean, so they got their kind of a few places that they want to hunt. Maybe and talk to your buddies. If you know some guys that are duck hunting, um, talk to them. A lot of people don't like to give up spots. We don't like to give up spots. We've gotten burned a couple times taking a few guys out, and then all of a sudden they bring out their friends. Um, and that's a great way to never get invited on a duck hunt again, is by by bringing other people to somebody else's spot. So don't ever do that. But just talk to guys, and maybe in your local hunting shop, they'll probably send you to a place that's probably a blown out spot that's been overhunted a lot, but they'll get you in an area, and that's where you want to be. You want to be in an area, and once you can start figuring out that area, you can start driving some of those back roads around there. You'll notice other public spots. I mean, that's what we did. We just drove back roads mainly and started finding public spots. Like, oh, there's a brown gate with a green sign on it. That's a public spot. We're good to hunt it. So yeah, start talking to some guys that if you know anybody. I mean, Caleb and I, we didn't really know anybody in college and just kind of had to figure it out ourselves. But that's a great place to start. After that, what do people need to start getting ready for duck season if they've never really done this before? This is the first time. They're not hunting their dad's lease. They're in college. They're not hunting their dad's lease or personal property or whatever. They don't have their own decoys. Do they need to go out and buy 100 decoys first day? Do they need to go out and buy the most expensive waders or the best, R&T acrylic duck call? I mean, how should we point these guys to move forward? In my book, of course, they don't need to do any of those things to kill ducks. We didn't. So what's the next step? I would say probably.
Well, so I think the next step is obviously making sure you have the basics right. You're gonna need decoys.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna need calls, waders, guns, shells, and probably you're obviously gonna need a decoy bag. Um, and then I would say a simple camo backpack, cheap, just to have as a blind bag, carry on your back, or have your buddy carry it if you're carrying the decoys. As far as decoys go, you don't need super nice decoys. You don't need flocked heads. Flocked heads look really good, right? But the primary purpose of a flocked head, in my opinion, is to finish some ducks that you think are going to come into your decoys. To really give them that like extra when they're close to your decoys, they can see them and they say, "Oh, those look real."
Yep.
But in my opinion, you can go and you can pick up some green headgear decoys on sale. You can Some of the best decoys that I think we've owned are the G&H decoys,
Yeah.
and those things have lasted forever.
Yeah.
They've got heads that move. Um, so what I would do is I would go and pick up probably 12 decoys, and this is something you need to look at a little bit um, and see what's in your area,
Yep.
right? So if you're hunting an area and you get a lot of teal or gadwalls, obviously you're going to want some teal and gadwall decoys.
Yep. But here's the
Um,
thing: are guys gonna know these newer guys? They're not gonna really know. Hell, they might not even know the difference between a teal and a gadwall. When they think ducks, all they think is those guys with the green heads. I mean, I sure as shit didn't know when we first
yeah,
started
yeah,
hunting. I was like, "There's different types of ducks. What are you talking about, man?" I thought they're all the same thing. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean that's definitely a valid point, and
Yeah.
I think that's you should go and you should look at duck identification
Mhm.
um, before you go hunting and kind of see what's in your area because a teal will decoy to a teal decoy,
Mhm.
and a gadwall will decoy to a gadwall decoy. Now, mallards, generally speaking, I have found that they will land just outside of whatever decoys are out there.
Mhm.
Um, and or they might land inside, but there's no real rhyme or reason. They'll sit down next to a gadwall decoy or whatever.
Bluebill or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would start off obviously. Everybody, the most abundant decoy out there is a mallard decoy,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of different brands that make good quality decoys. G&H makes a good decoy. Try and get something that has heads in a different direction. That's not essential. If you don't have that, try and get one, or you can drill a hole in the back of the back part of
Of the keel.
the keel and tie the line onto the rear, so that not all your ducks are facing one direction when the wind's blowing. Um, but other than that, if you do find that you have different ducks in the area, you've got gadwall, teal, mallard, maybe some divers. You can look on Greenhead Gear, and they've got different puddle packs of different types of decoys. And I find that those are pretty helpful just for mixing things up. But I wouldn't go with more than 12 because you're going to have to carry them.
Yep.
And then as far as decoy weights, um, the ones that have had the most success with and like the most, depending on how you're hunting, are the docks.
Docks.
Um,
Rig'em rights.
no, the docks. Rig'em Ride is a different
Yeah.
brand,
Docks.
and
Decoy anchors or something like that. Docks.
yeah,
He's small company. Small,
yeah.
small, small company.
The Rig'em Rights I don't like as much because they've got the PVC, like plasticky
Line.
line,
Yeah.
and I have found time and time again that as soon as it gets cold, I mean that line's snapping.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, they don't last the whole season.
Yeah.
Whereas
And,
these,
and they don't. They're not cheap.
yeah, no, they're not cheap. I mean, for 12, it's going to be 30 to $50. Whereas the docks, I've had docks. So I've been out of college
5 years.
6, yeah,
Yeah.
6 years, something like that. And
Had
I've had
this.
docks since sophomore year in college.
Yeah.
I mean, they just don't break.
Yeah.
So,
And by the way, what we're talking about out there, guys, so there's a couple different methods for decoy lines. Now, like the old traditional method is this basically taking like a cheap line, like a twine type line, and tying it to a lead weight, and you're just wrapping that line around the keel when you're putting your decoys up, and then you're clipping the lead weight to the keel, and it almost always comes undone in the decoy bag, gets all tangled up, and it's just a general huge pain in the ass, especially when it's cold outside and your hands are wet and all that. The rig'em rights or the docks basically are a long kind of
fishing line.
fishing line, super thick line. and it's got a weight attached to one end and essentially a loop on the other end, and you just carabine all the loops together, and that line just slips through a swivel on the keel, and it's just setting decoys and picking up decoys. It's easy. It's easy. If you don't have a huge budget, you guys are on a shoestring budget, I would say skip that and just get the regular line and lead weights. It's going to cost you 20 something bucks maybe.
Yeah.
And you'll be fine. If in a year, next season, you'll buy the rig and rides or the docks. After just being out there, especially if you put a lot of days in the season like we do. We hunt in college. We were hunting, I don't know, 40 days a season or something like that. And now I think I counted that I put in just over 30 days last season. So, yeah, definitely you're going to need decoy line of some sort, and you're going to need anchors and a decoy bag. So there's slotted decoy bags. There's your standard decoy bag that you just throw them into. Listen, if you guys are going to be hiking in anywhere, you can just go ahead and leave the slotted decoy bag on the shelf and grab your basic standard decoy bag. Your decoys are going to get banged up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured out what the name of that decoy rig. Doc's hunting stuff.
That's right. Doc's hunt and as like
stuff.
And apostrophe stuff.
Yeah, I think they're out of Texas.
No, they're out of Auburn, Alabama. I talked to him on the phone last year. He's designing a new decoy bag. It's pretty cool. I don't know if he's got it out yet, but he's a vet at Auburn. So
like a veterinarian?
Yeah, a veterinarian. So he does I think mostly like smaller animals. I don't think he's like a livestock vet. But he knows our sister, or one of our sister's really good friends. Our sister unfortunately went to Auburn. So but yeah, I talked to him on the phone. He's a cool dude. I mean, he's like just a guy, and you can call him up and he'll give you a call back, and it's just like what he does on the side. But I mean, they're by far the best decoy anchor system out there in my book, and we've used them all.
Yeah.
So yeah, just get you a decoy bag, and at that time you'll pretty much be ready to rock and roll. You're going to need some waders, and waders are every single one of you guys are going to start looking at waders, and you're going to go through. You're going to have some personal, almost religious decisions to make. And it doesn't matter what decision you make, because you will be unhappy with any decision you make.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a good pair of waders.
No, I mean, a waders is one of those things that you buy at the beginning of pretty much every season. And no matter what you do, no matter how nice you are to them, they will always let you down.
Always. At the worst time.
At the worst time. Yeah. So I've owned, what pairs of waders have I owned? The Cabela's.
Yeah, the Bass Pros.
So my first pair of waders was the PVC rubber, super heavy, non-breathable, just rubberized, almost like a mat.
Yeah.
That you would have like the bottom of a mat at locker room or something. So I owned those. I think it had like 600
Thinsulate boots.
Thinsulate boots. Constantly froze, but they were durable.
Yeah.
And I sweated because I mean they were like 50 pounds and non-breathable, and they're not even neoprene. So I sweated, and they just I just froze constantly. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to Cabela's 5mm 1200 or was it 1200 or 1000 degree Thinsulate waders, and those by far lasted the longest. The issue I had, the pros of them is that they're cheap. You can get them Just wait for them to go on sale. They're $100 and something dollars, maybe 200.
Yeah.
They're relatively cheap. You can send them back to Cabela's. The warranty on the Cabela stuff is really good if they break due to manufacturer error. The cons with those are the boots are huge. So if you start walking through mud, you're going to pick up about 20 pounds a foot of mud. The other thing is that it's neoprene, so it's gonna eventually wear down and leak, and you're gonna sweat. You're gonna sweat a lot because and it's somewhere. You're going to sweat. It's going to be hot. More importantly, to me, my feet sweat, and you can't turn neoprene like basically inside out.
Yeah.
Can't do any of that. So your feet are gonna sweat. And then the next day, you got to put your boots on. Your boots are cold. Your boots are wet because of that sweat. They never dried out. And so you basically go, if you hunt every day like I do, you will go 2 weeks with freezing feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what happens. So,
after that, you went to the Drakes, right?
I went to the Drakes. In my opinion, probably the most functional pair of waders I've ever owned, but also probably the least durable and lasted. I went through 2 pairs of Drakes because I sent them back. They just kept breaking. Crotch was leaking, after a week of use.
Same spot on both pairs
on both
of
them. Yeah. And so basically, what you're dealing with is you're dealing with PVC rubber, which is like the cheapest. You're going to deal with neoprene, and you've got 2 things of neoprene. You got 5 millimeter neoprene and 3 millimeter neoprene. 3 is going to be less thick, so you're going to be able to move more. It's going to be less hot. Not that it's cooler because it's still hot.
Yeah.
But you're also going to be colder, maybe, depending on the time of year that you're going. Then you've got the new type of waders, which came about like 2 years ago. And in my opinion, is what I'm using and will be using for the remainder, hopefully, unless something better comes out, is breathable waders, kind of like a Gore-Tex.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be able to explain what they're made out of better than I could.
Yeah, it's a Gore-Tex laminate material essentially. It's a lot thinner than neoprene. Yeah, you could just think of like any Gore-Tex rain jacket. It feels very similar to that, and I think they typically put a DWR finish on it as well, which is a durable water repellent. But the advantages of the breathable is that they breathe and they don't weigh anything. They're like super lightweight. That was the biggest thing I noticed, and it's a little confusing because at least the pairs that you and I were rocking this year, you had 2 different pairs of breathables this season, and I had 1 pair of breathables. I was flipping between a pair of neoprene and breathables, and it's crazy because they don't have insulation in them, for at least the ones we were rocking. But I would say by far this is the warmest I've ever been out of any season, because the moisture of walking in, setting up decoys, you're going to build a sweat up doing that. And then that moisture wicks out of the system, and your clothes dries back up, and I just stayed warmer. That was my finding. I had the Cabela's ones, and I think I ended up with a leak in them up by the right kind of thigh area. So I'm gonna have
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
That sucks.
I remember the last day of season, I had water in my boot. It was like the
that's
last week.
right.
Yeah.
So I think when you're talking about waders, like you guys, hear us talking about going through a few pairs of waders, every season. I can't remember a season, and our buddy Scott will say, "Oh, I wore my Cabela's 5 millimeter neoprene waders for 3 seasons straight." Like, he got a lucky pair.
Yeah.
Number one, and number two, like,
He had
we hunt.
Gorilla Glue all over him.
Yeah. Which doesn't ever work.
No, never.
By the way, like, you're
It's a
not
great
sealing
idea.
them.
It's a great
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, it doesn't work.
You're not like, I've put boat sealer on it, and like I've put fiberglass. Like, I put a fiberglass patch on my boot one year,
Yeah, I remember.
and
that.
within walking from like 200 yards, it had stripped off and was like flopping on my boot. And so patch kits are just useless.
I agree.
But you hear us talking. You got to understand that he and I hunt. Like, I think I counted up the days, and I was like 50 days out of the last 60-day season, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm hunting mornings and afternoons likely.
We hunt a lot.
And hunt probably in between too. I mean, if I'm not hunting in the morning, I'm always hunting in the morning. I'm usually eating lunch or scouting during the day, and then I'm going to hunt the evening or scout during the evening. So
that's a good, and we're kind of going all over the place, but that's fine. I think that's kind of how the conversation's taking us. But that's a good thing, and maybe we should touch on this on the next podcast. But times that you're hunting as well, we should probably talk about that at some point.
Yep.
Just real quick, like, for what's a morning hunt for us? I mean, we hunt from
6:30, say 6:30 to shooting light. You're probably going to hunt till 10:30.
I'd say we hunt longer than 10:30.
Well, here's the thing: is like, you're going to have two types of holes. You don't really know what you're hunting. In my opinion, you've got two types of holes. You've got like a morning hole where they're coming in first light.
Mm-hmm.
You've got like some of our holes where the first bird gets in there at 8:30.
Yeah.
Right. So, in some of those holes where the first bird gets there on 8:30, our best hunts are between 8:30 and 10:30, maybe 11.
Yeah, we've had great times up until 1 o'clock.
Yeah. So you've got to kind of know what you're hunting. I think if you're walking into public land, I think to be safe, you pack a lunch.
Yeah.
And some snacks and some water.
Yep.
Because generally speaking, the thing that's going to take you out is hunger.
Yeah.
I know for me, it's like, I can deal with the cold, but like, I start, rolling around 2 o'clock and I'm freezing my butt off. I'm going to want something to eat.
Right.
So I think that pretty much takes us through decoys and waders, right?
Yeah, decoys and waders. And let me just say one more thing while we're kind of on the time subject. I mean, we hunted in college. We hunted all day because we'd be hiking way into places, and we would just stay there throughout the day. Some of those hunts, and you're not going to kill birds if you're not there. You're just not, and you're not going to learn if you're not there. So stay out there as long as you can. The whole thing, if you haven't shot a limit by 7:30, you hear all these guys talking, "Oh man, we shot a 5-man limit. We were out of the hole and at the breakfast joint by 8 o'clock." For the most part, nonsense. I mean, guys, you're gonna get those days in a season. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the norm. It's not the norm for those guys. It's not the norm for most guys. You got to put the time in the blind, in the flooded timber, wherever you're at, whatever style you're hunting. Stay out there as long as you can until you have to leave.
I think too, like, to touch on that, you're going to see a lot of guys on TV. They're going to kill limits. A few things you got to remember about those guys. One, they're traveling the country, right? They're going to the best places and they're paying money for it. They're going to pay a lot of money to get on a field, to get a guide, whatever it is, or they already have a lot of money and have land.
Yeah.
So the the thing, like you look at Duck Commander and like, sure, I don't think the Duck Commander kills a limit every day. I don't.
Yeah,
You know,
no, he doesn't.
he's not saying that he doesn't, but I think those guys have put so much time into their land that they have imprinted ducks that come there every year, and
Mm-hmm.
they kill those ducks and those ducks' offspring, and they're able to switch holes so they don't wear out a hole in any given season.
Yep.
And by doing that, those ducks aren't ever going to leave that place. You
Yeah,
know, like they'll migrate up north, but they'll keep coming back to their holes. So, you know,
and they're also hunting 90 something days out of the season because they're following the migration from North Dakota
yeah,
all the way down to Louisiana. They're hunting the whole day because that's what they do, and they get 20 or 30 good shoots out of it that make up their video, you know?
yeah,
There's a lot of hours that they're just staring at nothing, you know?
yeah. Listening to what's that guy's name talk nonsense the
Oh
entire
yeah,
time.
sigh.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
Um, so I guess from there you need let's talk about probably the most important thing besides
decoys and waiters.
yeah, as a gun. And I think you need to look at where you're hunting and how you're hunting. Uh, I think something that you can automatically take off the list of bringing duck hunting is your grandfather's over and under. You know, a nice wooden gun.
Yeah, keep it
With
out.
keep it out. The next thing you need to look at is what your price range is. Usually with shotguns, I'm a firm believer that you pay for what you get, except for one exception, and that's
Yeah,
the 870, the Remington 870.
yeah,
And for me, I started off with the Remington 870. I will probably hunt with the Remington 870 for some parts of the season this season because of where I'm hunting. It's brackish water down in Louisiana, so I'm not going to bring my Super Black Eagle 2 out there,
yeah.
just because of the rust factor down here, the salt water, and everything else like that. It's not worth me messing up a gun uh, out here. Uh,
Yeah,
but
my
if
first gun was an 872.
yeah, and I would like if you're looking at getting a gun, Remington 870 synthetic stock, what 28, 26-inch barrel. You had a
Yeah,
26, I have a 28.
yep,
$360 maybe,
yeah,
and go in there and put an improved or a modified choke in there and get after it. You know, so uh, if you want to go on the higher end, you can start looking at automatics. And for me, an automatic is not worth it unless you're going to pay for a high price for a good automatic.
yeah,
Because an 870, you know it's going to shoot. Every single time you pull the trigger and then you slide that
action.
forearm back and the action back, you put another shell in there, it's going to go bang. It's what it does. It's what it was built to do. It does it in frozen conditions. It does it in wet conditions. It does it when you haven't oiled it. You know, I've had leaves and sticks inside my action, still shot.
Yeah,
I don't recommend that, but you know, obviously clean your gun. You know, treat it well. Um, the downside of the Remington 870 is the Remington barrels and the steel rust like crazy. So every time you get out, you're going to have to spray it down. You're going to have to wipe it down because one day in a gun case and it's going to rust.
yep,
Uh, you can have it dipped, which is what I had done with my gun, and that protected it a lot, and it helped me not have to constantly be cleaning the thing.
yeah.
Uh,
But for your
but
average guy that's just starting, like, you don't need a Super Black Eagle 2 to go out there and kill ducks. In fact, you're probably going to shoot worse because you're just going to be squeezing off rounds. if you haven't spent a lot of time with the shotgun. If you go to the clay range, shoot clays once, twice, maybe 7 times a year, whatever it is. Um, you're probably not the most proficient shooter. We weren't the most proficient shooters when we started shooting. I'm still not the most proficient shooter. All right, I was missing birds at the beginning of last season. This dude was yelling at me. He was so upset with me. But I got it figured out. But um, you know, 870 or a cheap pump. I don't want to be biased towards Remington. That's just what we use. We think they're better. We've obviously watched guys with other guns have a hard time, but um, you don't need the Super Black Eagle to go out there and shoot ducks. Just like you don't need the most expensive waders, just like you don't need the most expensive decoys and 100 decoys. And go out there, go to a pawn shop and buy an old 870. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, the things to look at though is obviously make sure you've got a stock on it. If you're going to go to a pawn shop, make sure you buy a long barrel.
Yep.
Some people do use 870s as a home defense weapon.
Synthetic stock too.
Synthetic, yeah. And like if you're going to say, oh, I'll just buy a new barrel for it.
No.
That doesn't work either because you're paying like $200 per barrel. So you may as well just get a new gun at that point.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, he blew up his barrel one year, and he didn't blow it up, but you deformed your barrel somehow.
Deformed it, yeah.
And
ended up with a different 870.
Yeah, you can't.
So just get the gun, get a long barrel 870 or whatever.
26, 28 inches.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so they've got their gun, they've got their waders, they've got a dozen decoys. And guys, we're going to come back and dive into the weeds on all these things for you. We're just trying to level this out to kick it off. Do they have to be a master kick-ass duck caller, blowing a single reed duck call in Stuttgart every year to kill ducks?
No, and as a matter of fact, I think that can hurt you more than it can help. So I blow a lot of duck calls. I consider myself fairly decent at it as far as hunting is concerned. I don't know too many people. They're out there that can blow. Obviously there's some guys in Stuttgart, guys that make the duck calls that can blow that are just awesome. Yeah. But as far as hunting is concerned, I can do whatever I need to do to that duck call and make it work. For my first duck call, I had the Duck Commander duck call. I would not, and then that wasn't the first one, that was the second one. I had a Primos wooden call that was just a piece of crap. I don't even know if it even, I don't think I could take that call right now and make it sound like a duck. So I think the things that you need to look at are somewhere between a $40 duck call and a $60 to $80 duck call for your first duck call. A double reed duck call. And just for you guys out there listening, the difference between a double reed and a single reed is a double reed is going to be easier to blow. A single quack on a double reed is going to sound probably more raspy. It's going to sound more like a natural duck. However, you are going to be limited on the amount of notes you can make with that duck call. It's not going to be as sensitive to the amount of air you're putting into it. It's not going to be as sensitive to your tongue movements. And therefore, it's not going to have, you're not going to be able to sound like 1,000 ducks on the water. Right? Single reed is going to be more sensitive. It's usually going to be louder. It'll be less raspy depending on the call. And you're going to be able to go real low, real high. You're going to be able to go softer. You're going to be able to go way louder with a single reed. Maybe not as fine as a double reed. Just depends on the quality of the call. So it's also going to be a single reed's going to be way harder to blow.
Yeah.
You're gonna top it out. You're gonna squeal it. When you're first learning, it's not worth going with a single reed because you're just gonna get frustrated with it. I know a lot of people who are good duck hunters that don't blow single reeds.
Yeah.
They just don't blow them.
Yeah. I didn't start blowing a single reed until pretty recently, past couple seasons, and I suck at it. Like I'm not. I mean, I've worked ducks with it, but I would be embarrassed to blow it on this here podcast. So.
The other thing that I think is overlooked with a double reed, and I wish I had a double reed, a good double reed on my call, is on my lanyard, is finishing ducks. I think because a double reed is easier to blow, and it sounds a little more raspy, and depending on the double call or the double reed, it's going to be less crisp too. So that's a negative. But I think you can go a little softer, and you don't risk throwing a bad note out there when you're finishing a duck.
That's a good point.
So I think that like a good double reed on your lanyard is not a bad thing, especially I mean, if it's the first bird of the season and you're bringing him in and you've got him on a string and then you throw a bad call out there, I mean, because it's the first bird, you're a little nervous. Like that's totally plausible.
Yeah.
So, what I would look at is the Echo Diamond Wood. Is that the one that you have? The wood one?
It's a timber, the double reed timber, Echo timber.
Yeah. So it is.
It's just the wooden version of that.
And it's diamond wood.
Yeah.
It's
like the layered Coca-Cola or whatever, the multicolored Coca-Cola wood. Yeah.
That's a good double reed call.
Their poly ones aren't bad. The plasticky, I mean, the Echo double reed timbers weren't bad on the cheaper end. I think they're like, what were those calls? $40?
$20.
Are they 20?
Yeah. So you've got three types of materials that duck calls are made out of. You've got acrylic, which is going to be expensive. It's going to offer louder, crisp sounds. You've got wood, which is going to be less expensive, and that's going to be a mixture, and you can probably get pretty soft on a wood call too. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little more soft. And then you've got like plastic calls. That's going to be your $20 call. The it's going to be pretty cheap. It's not going to sound the best. It's not going to be crisp. It's not going to be soft.
Yeah, I think you're right. You need to go with the wooden one.
You can get that Echo, and I'm repping Echo because that's what you have, and that's what I think is a good call. But I personally blow R&T now. Mm-hmm. But I think Echo probably makes the best call, and you're not going to drop a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
Best call for beginners, anyways.
Right.
There's some Duck Commander calls, like the $20 Duck Commander calls. Those are okay. I think you kind of just need to go to Bass Pro and blow them, whatever.
Yeah.
The problem with the Duck Commander calls is that wood that they use. If it's the wood call, it expands and it contracts, and if that barrel comes out of the insert comes out of the I think it's called the barrel. If that comes out of the barrel,
falls in the water, you're done.
Oh yeah, and then if that comes out, and then there's no like cork insert holding that reed on, and then the thing's in the water, or you can't get it back and you can't get it tuned, and so I would expect to pay like $20 to $60, something like that. The Echo double reed timber is really good call. Also, the zinc power. If you're going to spend $20, a zinc power hen, one plastic. I think it's a double read. It might be a single read, but it's easy and it's a good call. Um, and then as you get better, you can move to a single read call.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation.
Cool.
Yeah.
Definitely get a whistle.
Yep.
You can't blow a duck call. You can't make a series of quacks, but you can whistle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
It.
we killed birds with whistles, man. When we first started, we killed birds not sounding like ducks at all.
Yeah.
Mostly. Probably mergansers. We killed a lot of divers and stuff, but
Well, you can kill like a gadwall with a messed up mallard quack.
oh yeah.
I mean, you can do that because a gadwall kind of beeps at you like like a little bit. Actually, it's nothing what they sound like. But you can blow a messed up a mallard call, and a gadwall will and sometimes often does respond to it in a positive manner. There's a lot of times where I'll be calling and you or Scott or somebody will hit the whistle, Drake whistle, maybe like a little teal whistle, widgeon, whatever it is. And those birds that I'm blowing at with the $600 that I have around my neck will respond to a $10 whistle better than they will respond to whatever I'm doing and whatever I can do on the duck call. So a whistle is not to be underestimated at all.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Yeah, I think that's good on the calls. I've definitely got a direction to move from, and we'll come back and we'll post more videos just about maybe calling strategies and a little bit more in the future. But after that, I think these guys are ready to go duck hunting. You throw a little bit of camo on, and just get out there and try it. Another thing on the camo, guys, you don't have to have the most expensive freaking camo setup. You don't have to have the cool name brand stuff. I mean, we do now, but we didn't for years. And honestly, if I was to do it over again, I wouldn't even wear a lot of the waterfowl hunting stuff. I'd be wearing like whatever I already have and then throwing like my last little layer on top as a camo piece. I mean, you don't have to have the full Drake get up, the $400 jacket or whatever to go out and kill ducks. I mean, it might look cooler in your pictures, and hey, I love to look cool in pictures.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite thing, but you don't need that.
Yeah, what I would say about the camo is you're going to look at like Browning makes camo. There's some like Realtree jackets out there. There's some like Columbia jackets. There's some Bass Pro jackets, and they all suck, right? They all have the same crappy material in them, shipped from the same country in Asia to different brands who label them different things.
Yep.
You'll find that like with waders all the time, right? That happens all the time. So if you've got backpacking gear, like a cold weather backpacking gear, I have a North Face synthetic filled puffy jacket that I bought for backpacking. It rolls up. It's a good jacket. I still wear that.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing, I wear often is like a flannel shirt. Right. Yeah. I'll wear a flannel shirt, stay warm. Any type of wool works good, and then you throw a camo rain jacket over it, you're good to hook.
Yep.
I would say the one thing you can't underestimate, though, is camo on your face and hands.
100%.
And then hiding your face and hands.
Yeah. And don't ever wear cotton. Don't wear cotton sweatpants. You'll freeze.
Don't wear cotton socks.
Don't wear cotton socks. Wear wool if you can. Smart wool socks, Those are cheap now. You can get them at Costco for like $10. Um, wear some Under Armour leggings under your waders. As it gets colder, beef that up with something that's not cotton, preferably wool or like some synthetic material. And then yeah, like if you're gonna buy a camo rain jacket. Get a good rain jacket and wear whatever else you got under it. I would say to this day, the best purchase I ever made was that Gore-Tex rain jacket that I have now. Because it doesn't matter what you wear under it. You just wear a bunch of warm stuff and you stay dry, and it's duck season. It's pretty much always raining anyways. At least where
Yeah,
we
it's
hunt.
what, raining or cold,
Yeah.
so you're gonna want it.
Yeah.
You know.
Um,
Uh, yeah. So I mean, we can go back and we can talk more in depth about these topics if you guys write in and you want to hear more about something.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely comment and send in your questions. We'll post an email address with this as well and some show notes. And I think, we're going to go back and just start touching on the stuff that we want to touch on and expand on it because I think it's good for us to talk about this anyways as we're rolling into the season. Um, but we'll definitely talk about strategy, decoy strategies. We'll talk about calling strategies. We'll talk about uh, a little bit more about how to scout. We'll talk about maybe do some gear reviews, stuff like that. Um, we'll get into the nitty gritty, and we can. Those are the conversations that I'm looking forward to having and helping you guys out with because it took us a long time to learn it. Other than that, man,
do we want to talk about shells, or we out of time?
no, we got time. I would say we just go as long as we want to. If they want to stop listening, they can just press pause or whatever.
Yeah.
So shells, that was some lesson I learned. It took me a long time to learn that lesson. Shells is an important lesson.
Yeah. So shells, and I'm going to get this wrong because I know what I like, and I haven't put a ton of thought into it. Other than I've tried stuff and having it not work, right? So I shoot generally shells come in numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have letters at the lowest range, like BB, T shot, and then like the lowest range is buckshot. It's going to be bigger balls that are coming out of your barrel. So, as you work your way up from tee shot, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
I think it goes to
Now,
7.
yeah, and it goes to 7, and I think it goes to 8 even, But
For duck hunting.
for duck hunting, generally speaking, I am going to rock a number 3 or a number 4 in some sort of steel shot or some sort of like a heavy metal shot. And here's the thing about shotgun shells, and we can pull somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. Scott probably knows a little more, definitely knows more than I do about this.
Yeah, we'll get somebody
And
else
you
on the
know, I mean,
podcast.
we know a lot of guys who have studied ballistics and know a lot about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, for duck hunting, you are going to have to get non-toxic shot, which means that it cannot be lead. It has to be steel, or it has to be another variant of another type of steel, tungsten, bismuth, something that apparently doesn't decay in water. Although that's a separate debate to be had with separate people.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, if you're going to shoot steel, I shoot between a 3 and a 4.
Yep.
Right. And then from there, you're looking at speed, velocity coming out of the barrel. so muzzle velocity. And usually, I think you're shooting like your average skeet shell or target shell is shooting like 1,300.
Yep.
So maybe a little higher, maybe just under 14. And then you're going to have higher velocity shells in duck hunting. Some are going to shoot right in the 1,300 range. The ones that I was shooting were the Remington Hyper Steel. I do not recommend those because it's too much for a gun to handle, and the recoil on them is heavier. I was having ejection problems because I think it was moving. I was using them out of an automatic. It was shooting it was moving the action back so fast and so far that it was throwing the timing off on the shotgun.
Yeah.
And it's an automatic timed gun, so I don't know how that really happens, but I was getting a lot of double feeds. I was getting a lot of stovepipes.
Yeah, you're having issues.
Yeah,
Beginning of the season, every shoot, your gun only went off once. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, so I stopped using those. I mean, now granted, when I was using them and I hit a bird, there was exit wounds.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, those steel pellets are coming out fast, and they're hitting the bird, with some force there.
Right.
So I would not. What I would look at, the ones I would stay away from, are your cheapest ones, like the Remington. I don't even know what they call. They have a picture of a mallard on the front.
Yeah, the blind sides or the X.
No,
Dry
it's
locks.
like
The dry locks.
dry locks.
Yeah.
Stay away from the Remington dry locks.
Yeah.
I would stay away from the Remington Hyper Steel unless your gun can handle it.
Yeah. If you're shooting an 870, it's not an issue.
Yeah, it might not be. But another thing you've got to remember too is now I'm moving from 1,700 feet per second back down to somewhere in the 1,300 feet per second.
Yeah, 1,450, somewhere in that range.
So you're looking at a lead difference there, and so I would not recommend going up to 1,700 feet per second and changing that lead because when I went down, I had to go back and shoot sporting clays and some skeet, and I just was missing.
Yeah.
Because I was so much used, and I was shooting behind every time. So I had to completely readjust
your lead.
My lead. And like Scott can attest to that because I spent a lot of time in the summer trying to fix my lead this year. So I don't know if I'd even go down that road. So the other shells I would stay away from are the Winchester blindside. It looks like you throw confetti at something. And like they say that it's like stacked in a cube so they can fit more shells in there. But it's like I know these aren't patterning well.
Yeah.
Despite whatever article I read, like, in Duck Magazine, whatever, when I shoot at mud and I've got like a 15-yard circle of shells, I know they're bouncing off each other down the barrel.
Right.
Like, maybe their test proves something else.
Right.
Go out and throw it, shoot it against the paper target, and tell me what you think.
Yeah. All right, so don't buy those. What should they look at? I know what I shoot, and I would almost say probably not to buy them, but we'll see. I don't love the shells I shoot at all.
The shells that I like and that I still have faith in are the heavy metal.
Yep.
Although they're brass on the heavy metal, the past 3 years they've started making the brass a cheaper brass, and what I have seen over and over again is that brass expand once you pull a trigger. That brass is expanding, getting stuck in your barrel. So the the extractor on that bolt that's pulling that back, sometimes it's usually right here and it slides
Mm-hmm.
and it pulls the shell with it as it moves back. But on those, I have constantly seen some sort of cheap brass. They expand a little bit. This rim right here is cheap. The extractor pulls right through the rim. The shell's still
Yeah, not to mention the
in the
primer
ring.
issues they had this year too. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know what's going on with those guys. I would imagine they had to have some sort of recall on these shells. But there's a guy in our crew. I'm sure he'll end up on the podcast. But he had basically bought a case of them, and they were worthless. Um,
yeah.
he
I
had
mean,
to.
when you hit a bird with them, they
They they
work they
they
work
die.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
If they shoot, they work pretty well.
yeah, I mean, sometimes like he would pull the trigger and there'd be like a fizzle, no bang, which is a dangerous situation because then you don't really know what's going on with the powder on the inside. You know, BBs are rolling
Rolling
out of
out
the
of
tip of his
yeah.
barrel. Yeah, it's just so you got to kind of be worried about that. I still like them because they kill birds. I like and I like the stuff that you shoot.
Yeah, I shoot Black Cloud.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I go back and forth on Black Cloud. I mean, for me, and it's just because I've been shooting with them for so long. When I'm when I shoot Black Cloud, typically a bird dies.
yeah,
Um, they don't hit birds nearly as hard as the heavy metal, from what I've noticed, or the hyper velocity. I end up with a lot of cripples, and maybe that's just because I suck at shooting. So I don't know.
I think.
They're not a super fast shell.
No, they're not a shoot, but neither is
Heavy metal.
the heavy metal. But I think that they're a good shell. They're reliable.
They always
That
shoot.
they're gonna go bang. That wad keeps everything together. It's a good wad.
Yep. You can
Um,
shoot them through pretty much any choke.
yeah. Well, some of the extended chokes you got to be careful.
That's right.
You've got to look at the choke system,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll say like Black Cloud approved or whatever because they've got this weird
Wad.
wad. But it's a good, it's a good shell.
There's another reason I like them is they're always on the shelf. If you
Yeah,
have to go to Walmart to buy your shells, or if you're, for me, I could stop at a variety of different places. The main thing is you want to stay consistent on the shells. If you start the season off with something and you hit birds with it, stick with it because you don't want to end up changing your lead. Um, and so that's what I like about Black Cloud is as you're getting into like day 45 and all of a sudden there's no shells on the market because federal's so huge. Um, they can still get product on the shelves at Walmart or Gander Mountain or Bass Pro or whatever. It's always there, which is nice.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and it's. I think it's a good shell.
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It is. It is. Um, Other than that, man, I think this is a good place to kind of start winding things down. What do you think?
yeah, I think it's a good place. And
Yeah,
then
put some money into your shells. It's a huge thing. I know it's hard. Um, when we were in college, we were broke. I was shooting dry locks for the first couple seasons. Um, it's the last thing. You put all this work into it. What are you trying to do? You're trying to shoot a shotgun shell at a duck.
yeah, yeah.
Have a good shell. So
Well, yeah, I would say there's two aspects of that, and the first aspect is like if you're going to shoot a dry lock, like chances are if you hit it, you're going to wound it.
yeah,
You're not going to kill it. It's
yeah,
not very humane. It's not a very sportsman thing to do, right? Is to have that bird go off in the bushes or dive when you go to grab it and it dives on you and you can't get it. You can't harvest that animal
yeah.
because you decide to shoot a shitty shell at it.
All right.
The second aspect of it is that if you know you're shooting something that is proven and that has killed a lot of birds, like the ones that we mentioned to you,
Mm-hmm.
you know if you're missing or if you're crippling, it's you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And people have always said, well, still just doesn't kill them like lead does. And that is probably absolutely true. Probably 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the deal is like you get those birds close enough, and I'm close enough, I've killed birds way further than I should probably say.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, inside 30 yards is pretty safe. You can kill birds with those shells that we talked about.
Yeah.
If you want to shoot further than that, you start getting into chokes and maintaining velocity and keeping a tighter pattern. Because the idea is that as you get further out, you want more of those pellets to hit the bird, be in the kill zone.
Yeah, and one or two is not going to do it anymore.
Yep. So, you need to be where if they're inside 30, inside 20, even better. You can open that pattern up,
mm-hmm.
and you'll end up with some dead birds on the water. Yeah. So that's what I've got to say about the shells.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to come in other conversations when we're talking about when to call the shot, when to shoot birds, stuff like that. So we'll get into that, dive into the weeds. I think, I think that's a good place. Anything else you want to say before we end this thing?
No.
All right. Yeah. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll hopefully have this up on iTunes as well. Give it a like if you like the podcast. Leave some messages. We're not claiming to be the best duck hunters in the world, but we know a thing or two, and we hopefully can help you out. And if you know more than us, we'd love to have a conversation with you. So
and tell us your spots.
Yeah, tell us your spots. Where are you hunting at?